keeping score. I sort of started this last week, and it's already kind of gotten a little bit of flack on Twitter and on YouTube of the zero RB people getting a little bit defensive. What I'm doing is I'm just each week I'm looking at who finished top 12 in running back and wide receiver ones, so your RB ones and your wide receiver ones, and I'm seeing what their ADP was, and I'm just sort of highlighting how many players drafted top 24 finished in the top 12. Guys you drafted as a starter who finished as top 12 who, helped you, because you don't want to have a guy finish top 24. You don't want an RB2 or a wide receiver 2. That doesn't actually help you at all. Like, they're not losing your week, but they're not winning your week either. You want as many running back ones and wide receiver ones as you can get. And so that's sort of where I chose the cutoff of these guys you took as a starter. You took planning to have them be someone you'd use most weeks, so that's why it's top 24. But they finish as somewhere they can help you. And so we will start with, let's start with wide receiver. So just pop that up here on the screen. Blam.
Blam.
So for those of you watching on YouTube, you can already see where they finished. For those of you listening on iTunes.
Where is it?
Yeah, you can't see
I can't see it. Where is it, guys?
For those of you on iTunes, I'll just rattle this off really quick. Number one was Stephon Diggs. No surprise if you saw that game. Finished with 24 fantasy points. This is all in standard scoring. None of that PPR nonsense, which is probably more of what zero RB is angled at. This is more about, does this work in standard too? Let's find out. So Stephon Diggs, number one, he was drafted as the wide receiver 42 in the 9th round. So not someone you took as a starter.
Screaming hot value.
No diggity. Number two is Travis Benjamin with 23.4 fantasy points, drafted as the wide receiver 46 in the 11th round. Again, you were not trying to start Travis Benjamin. We got our first starter of the wide receivers at 3, Kelvin Benjamin, taken as the wide receiver 24. Literally the last person taken as a starter. 22.8 fantasy points. So far, he's looking very good this year.
He has.
Corey Coleman, rest in peace, rest in peps. He was the wide receiver 4 with his 2 touchdowns, 22.4 fantasy points, but drafted as the wide receiver 45, 10th round. He was a sleeper. Next, we get Eric Decker, another starter. He finished 5th. He was drafted as the wide receiver 23, just barely taken as a starter at the end of the 4th round, and he had 18.6 fantasy points. Next is DeAndre Hopkins, the first stud that's actually on this list. Drafted as a wide receiver 4, first rounder, and he produces the wide receiver 6. So actually producing pretty close to his ADP too. So that's good if you're glad to see that at a nuke after week 1. Number 7, Marquise Goodwin. I don't know how you say his first name.
The Olympian.
Yeah, basically. He tried out for the Olympics, so that's something. He went undrafted. He's nobody. But he finished as the 7th wide receiver with 17 fantasy points. 8th, Julio Jones, the only other stud on this list. Taken as a wide receiver 3, finished 8th, 16 fantasy points. Mike Wallace clocks in at wide receiver 9.
There he is.
16 fantasy points, but he was taken as wide receiver 59. The 14th round, undrafted in some leagues then as a result perhaps, or just very late. Number 10, Danny Amendola. With 15 fantasy points, drafted as the wide receiver 72, round 19. So that's like MFL 10s at that point, or like the FFPC league that we're doing that so far I hate.
Whoa, come on.
All right, it's not fair. It's only been 2 weeks. Mostly, it's just like you can't trade, man. I want to be able to trade. That's like the best part.
That's half the fun.
I know. So Danny Amendola comes in wide receiver 10. 11, Greg Salas, however you say his name.
Salsa. Pretty much the same. It's an anagram,
pretty much
right?
the same. Yeah. He went undrafted, but had 14.9 fantasy points. And then last is Larry Fitzgerald. Almost drafted as a starter, but he was taken as wide receiver 28. So technically not a starter. Sorry, guys. Taken at the end of the 5th round. And 14 fantasy points. So as we saw this week, only 4 wide receivers drafted as a starter finish in the top 12. That leaves 8 guys that most of which you could have gotten really late. These are mostly guys that are wide receiver 42 and later. These are like the late guys that were probably on your bench and you're upset about, or just not even on your team. So not a good week for the early wide receiver 0 RB crew. It did not turn out well for them.
Well, get used to Stephon Diggs, hearing that name, because I think he's going to be the guy we look at and say, oh, well, you're talking about these running backs you can find late that become useful. Stephon Diggs is probably going to end up as a wide receiver 2. I mean, if he reproduces the games that he's put up already, then he will be like a top 15 wide receiver this year. It might be a little early to say that, but I feel pretty confident saying that he's a wide receiver 2. And like you said, he was drafted like the 9th round.
Yeah, 9th round. He's taken very late. And yeah, wide receiver 2, I think, is probably his floor, just off of being the number 1 in that offense. Should see a ton of workload. Has a competent quarterback in Sam Bradford, it appears. So, yeah,
Sammy Bagels.
Sammy Bagels, yeah. So I think, yeah, Diggs is money this year. I like him a lot. So let's move on to the running backs. But blam, that's up on the screen. For those
of you, over here?
It is actually, yeah.
Got it. Nailed it.
For those of you wondering what the colors mean, so you're seeing I have highlighted some colors. Green means they were drafted top 12. Yellow means they were drafted as a number 2 at their position, but like pretty close to the edge, like running back 15. That's so close that it's like you kind of like saying, oh, that's right there. And then orange is the guys that are just barely starters, like around running back 24. Okay. And then uncolored is they weren't drafted as a starter. So running backs. Number 1 was Matt Forte, taken as a starter, running back 15 in the 4th round. If you draft Matt Forte, you were starting him. You probably started him week 1. You were definitely starting him this week after we did week 1. So 28.9 fantasy points, beast of a week, Matt Forte. Number 2, apparently my boy, Isaiah Crowell.
Ooh, there he is.
Taken as the running back 41 in the 11th round. Which if you listen to me at all during the offseason, I was saying that's a value. I liked Crow there, and it's paid off through 2 weeks. 20.8 fantasy points. The number 3 running back, D'Angelo Williams. No one's really surprised to see that. This is one of those weird ones where it's like you were kind of drafting him as a starter, but only for 3 weeks. So I'm not going to count it just based off of he's not helping you season long.
It's going to be Lev Bell week 4. Yeah,
you get one more week at D'Angelo Williams. So like enjoy it while it's lasted. Running back 32 is where he's drafted, 8th round. The 4th running back was LeGarrette Blount, taken running back 37 in the 9th round, 18.3 fantasy points. So far through the first 4, it's like, oh, these are sounding like a bunch of late guys. This is looking good for zero RB. Well, not after this.
Hold your horses.
Hold your horses. Number 5, Melvin Gordon. He was taken as the running back 23, just barely a starter in the 6th round, 18 fantasy points. At this point, expect to see his name in this list pretty often, I think, after the Woodhead injury. Number 6, Tay Train, Latavius Murray. Taken as the running back 17 in the 4th round. You took him as a starter, and he has been great so far with 16 fantasy points. Number 7 was Giovanni Bernard. Just barely.
Sneaky start.
Yeah, he was a sneaky start for us, and here he is. Finished as the 7th running back, so I hope you listened. With 15.7 fantasy points. Just barely taken as a starter at running back 24. Right there on the edge.
Snuck in there. I like it.
Sneaks in, taken in the 6th round as well. Ryan Matthews at number 8. Before the Monday night game, I did this list, and Ryan Matthews obviously wasn't on it because he hadn't played. Zeke Elliott was sitting at number 12, and Ryan Matthews just bumps him right off this list. So picture Zeke sitting at number 13. Ryan Matthews at number 8, 15.5 fantasy points, taken as the running back 21, just barely a starter as well, end of the 5th round. CJ Anderson is the running back at 9. Manderson is looking like he's going to be an RB1 all year probably. Running back 13, 3rd round, you were starting him.
Yep.
DeMarco DeMurray as the running back 10. It's his 2nd week in a row on this list. There's a few guys this is their 2nd week in a row on this list. So here's Murray again at the running back 10, but he's taking a running back 19 in the 5th round. As long as Murray can stay healthy, he's probably hanging around a low in RB1 the rest of the year.
I love it.
Running back 11, David Johnson. Another repeat. So far, the only guy that was taken as a top 12 running back, taken in the 1st round. He was taken as RB2. Here he is at RB11. So not quite what you were hoping for when you took him, but hey, it's an RB1.
Yeah.
Then last, and maybe least, Tevin Coleman.
Okay.
Taken as the running back 46, then drafts 13th round. Had 13 fantasy points. So you probably weren't starting Tevin Coleman after the mess that was week 1. And then picture Zeke just hanging here off the edge. If you're like, well, look, there's only one running back that was drafted in the top 12 that made this cut. Well, Zeke was there before Ryan Matthews' fluky game, so like.
All right. Well, let's keep it fair. Who's the wide receiver 13 then? If you're gonna tell people to keep Zeke in mind, who is the wide receiver 13?
Let me pull it up.
I love just blowing your segment up.
Yeah, let's blow it up. Hopefully this doesn't hurt things. If it hurts, then I'm going to take back what I said about Zeke.
Yeah, that's it. It's easy fix.
Let's see. Wide receiver, week 2. Blam. Hold on, everyone. The wheels are turning. Oh, nope. This still helps. It was Jerron Brown was the wide receiver 13.
The other Jay Brown in Arizona.
The other Jay Brown, yeah, and he went undrafted. So we're not actually going to do this. This is unfair to wide receiver to be like, hey, also count Zeke. He's right on the edge. But,
it's top 12.
It's basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that leaves 8 running backs of the top 12 were taken as starters, double what we saw from the wide receivers. This is a victory for early running back. If we're gonna look at it that way, as like a war. More of the early running backs did better this week than the early wide receivers, and there were there's some nice late running backs that did well. And to bring up the wide receiver numbers again, but blam, 8 late wide receivers who could have helped you win your week. So this is looking like a good week for early running back. We'll see how it lasts throughout the year. The argument that I'm sure we'll get on YouTube and on Twitter is, well, yeah, but this was, now there's all these injuries. Now Adrian Peterson is gone, and Doug Martin is gone, and Jonathan Stewart is gone. And yes, that makes the pool of top 24 running backs smaller. But also, it was already at a disadvantage because Jamal Charles hasn't played. Thomas Rawls hasn't played.
Bell hasn't played.
Yep. Lev Bell. Yeah, those are 3 guys that were taken as top 24 running backs who haven't played. So already at a disadvantage, running back is doing better than early wide receiver.
Okay. Well, the question I have for you, Leo Kaliski,
yes,
is this segment is called Keeping Score.
Yeah.
This week the score was 8-4.
8-4.
Last week it was 7-6 in favor of the wide receiver.
Yes, after you just blew up my spot.
So after 2 weeks, that makes the score
14.
I'm going to put your math skills on
14 running backs to 11 wide receivers. Yes.
There it is. So 14 to 11.
14 to 11.
Obviously, robust is a better strategy. Boom.
Boom. That's it. 2 weeks in, we're done. Yeah, you're seeing, and I've seen lots of people sort of talk to me about, like, well, what does this mean? Like, this is a small sample size. Yeah, it's a small sample size because fantasy is a weekly game. It's not a season-long game. This is not, unless you're playing in some weird roto league where it's just like you play all season and the person with the most points wins. Unless you're doing that, you need to win your weekly matchups, and so fantasy is a weekly game, and so the people who help you week to week, that's what matters. It's going to be easy to look at the season long numbers and probably say, hey, look, 0 RB worked out better, but it doesn't matter if week to week they lost more of the weeks. So not only is it that running back is doing better overall, but now I guess it's tied up because wide receiver just edged out running back last week, and now running back has a decisive victory against wide receiver this week.
Yeah, and I mean it's been a pissing contest between the 0 RB guys and the guys that not even robust. I feel like robust is a very unpopular draft strategy, but more of just taking running backs early in the draft, because even that was getting crapped on by the 0 RB guys. Like, you can't waste that first round pick on a running back. I mean, you just pointed out we haven't seen Lev Bell yet. We haven't seen Jamal Charles. There are guys that will come and, well, you never know Jamal Charles at this point. That one's
a question mark. Who knows?
We know Lev Bell will come back in week 4, and he should be on that list every week, I'd imagine, with the way that Pittsburgh's running game looks. I mean, right now, D. Will is the number 1 running back in fantasy through 2 weeks. So you could make the argument that spot is going to be Lev Bell. Yeah. Yes, you didn't draft D. Will to be a top 24 guy, but you kind of did for 3 weeks. Like you said, he's a contingency plan. So you're kind of taking that Pittsburgh backfield, which should be in the top 5.
Oh, yeah.
Top 3, probably, realistically.
I could see it being that way for sure.
So, I mean, by the end of the season, it's probably going to be, you can make arguments for both sides, but this offseason, the narrative was around not drafting running backs. Running backs were basically exiled from conversations. Like, you can't be taking a running back in round 1 unless it's Zeke Elliott. What is going on here?
Well, it looks like what actually looks like the only early round running back like that's really worked out is David Johnson, like a first rounder.
David Johnson.
Like, actually what looks like the best strategy so far was going wide receiver in the first couple rounds and then running back for the next like 3 or 4 rounds. It looks like so far that's what spanned out the most because all the running backs sitting are like the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounder. But the thing with zero RB is it wasn't go wide receiver early. It was go wide receiver for 5 rounds. It was ignore running back till the mid to late rounds, which those running backs aren't hitting consistently like the round 3s through 5 running backs are.
Yeah. I mean, that's the extreme version of zero RB. Some people might try to argue, oh, it's like 3 or 4 rounds. But even if you went wide receiver for the first 4 rounds, then you're still missing out on most of these guys on the list.
Yeah.
On the running back list.
Yeah, you're still missing Forte, Murray, etc.
Yeah, and there have been plenty of late round wide receivers that have, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 potential. And I'm sure a lot of people will point out that, well, Antonio Brown's off to a slow start, so that's not very accurate. He's not on that list. Or Odell Beckham's off to a slow start. Well, we can't really take this as it really is because the big names aren't there. Well, you can't make that argument because guess who's not on the list for running back? Todd Gurley's not there. He's been off to a terrible start. Like we said, we haven't even seen Lev Bell yet.
Yeah.
Lamar Miller
hasn't cracked this list yet, yeah.
He hasn't cracked the list. We just saw him play tonight. He put up over 100 yards again, but he just hasn't found the end zone yet. He falls into the end zone one of these weeks, and he's going to end up around 16 to 20 points because he is consistently getting about 10 points a game in standard, a little bit more in PPR, obviously. So, yeah, the argument goes both ways. I mean, I think we've said this from the start that kind of a mix has been the best strategy in our opinion, or taking a stud running back like David Johnson and then mixing from there, taking a couple good wide receivers and then going running back from there on out. So the whole zero strategy thing, I don't know if it's going to be very popular for very long.
Boom. Shots fired. All right. Let's wrap this up. That's it for keeping score.